Imagine you're that girlfriend who believed in a perfect relationship, where love was supposed to be the answer to everything. You trusted him completely, but behind closed doors, the reality was different. Your boyfriend, the person you thought would protect you, instead became the source of fear and pain. And just when you thought things couldn't get worse, everything takes a dark and unexpected turn. Suddenly, police find you and your boyfriend dead. The suspicions immediately turn to him, the man with a history of violence and control. That's what the police thought when Holly Williams and Bill Lanway were found dead in 2020. Because Holly had just gotten a restraining order against Bill, a sign things were horrible. The police thought they had it figured out. He must have killed her, and then himself, they said. But as they dug deeper, they found evidence that didn't fit that story. What they uncovered was shocking, a plot so twisted and complicated it didn't make sense at first. This wasn't just a sad ending to a bad relationship. It was a story of secrets, lies, and moves that no one saw coming. If you think you know how this ends, think again. The truth behind Holly and Bill's deaths is a wild ride, full of surprises. Let's take a closer look and uncover what really happened. On March 13, 2020, a construction worker freaked out and called 911. They'd come across a smashed-up car by the road as it had slammed into a tree. Inside were two people, Bill in the passenger seat and Holly in the back. At first, it seemed like a bad accident. But when the cops got there and took a closer look, it was clear something much darker had happened. Both Bill and Holly had been shot multiple times. Bill had taken 2 shots to the head, one dangerously close to his temple. Holly had been hit in the head and chest. What's really messed up is that Holly didn't die right away from her chest wound. She fought for her life before someone shot her in the head. Bill, though, didn't stand a chance. His wounds were deadly right off the bat, ending him almost instantly. Before delving deeper into the mysterious accident, let us learn about Holly Williams and Bill Lanway. Holly Williams was born on January 14, 1987, and grew up in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, just a short drive from bustling Nashville, famous for its vibrant music scene and cultural attractions. Despite the city's charm, Holly's childhood was tough. Her parents divorced early on, and her relationship with her mom was strained. Seeking stability, Holly moved in with her dad and stepmom for a while, navigating family tensions while dreaming of a brighter future. Eventually, Holly found her groove in downtown Nashville, where she became an esthetician. Someone who does skincare stuff like facials. Work was going well, but her family life was still tough. She had to cut ties with her mom but stayed super close to her 5 siblings, especially her sister Emily. They were inseparable, always doing holiday stuff together, like carving pumpkins and rocking matching PJs. Then, in 2018, at a music festival in Nashville, Holly met Bill Lanway. He was a car mechanic with this crazy energy that just drew people in. They clicked instantly, both loving the nightlife scene, hitting up bars and dancing their hearts out. Bill was like a magnet at parties, always the life of the party, making sure everyone had a blast. But Bill's past, man, it was rough. Born in Clarksville, Tennessee on March 17, 1983, his childhood was scarred by some serious stuff. When he was little, his dad did something horrible. He held the family hostage and then tragically stabbed Bill's mom. It was devastating. After that, Bill and his sister were raised by relatives. In his early 20s, Bill met Dana Jones, and they soon had a baby together. 6 months into their casual relationship, Dana found out she was pregnant. Despite the casual start, they were excited to become parents. But when Madison was 4, she got seriously sick with a rare brain cancer that had spread to her lungs and pancreas. After a year of intense treatment, Madison went into remission, but the cancer returned worse than before, and she passed away on September 21, 2011. Bill was devastated, and eventually they got separated. After the heartbreak of losing Madison and his relationship with Dana falling apart, Bill eventually meets Holly Williams. But little did they know, darker days were ahead, and their story would take some unexpected turns. Starting in 2018, Bill and Holly were stuck in this messy on-again, off-again cycle. They'd date, have a big dramatic breakup, and then get back together, rinse and repeat. Everyone around them saw their relationship as super toxic. Holly even texted her friends a few times, hinting that she was scared of Bill, though she didn't say it outright. Things got even worse over time. In December 2019, Bill shattered Holly's windshield and punched her in the mouth. The cops got involved, and Bill was arrested, but Holly decided not to press charges, saying she'd handle it herself. It's easy to wonder why she didn't do more, but Holly knew Bill well enough to guess how he might react if she involved the police. Sometimes, calling the police can make things worse, so she probably had her reasons. Then, in March 2020, Bill flipped out again. This time, they were at Holly's apartment, and during a fight, he covered her mouth so she couldn't breathe. Holly managed to escape, and Bill left. During this chaos, Holly's little dog, Max, went missing. After that argument, Holly decided enough was enough. She went to the police and said she was ready to take legal action against Bill. They charged him with aggravated assault and false imprisonment, but he got out on bond. Knowing Bill's temper, Holly must have been really worried he'd come after her again. So, she took out a protective order against him. A few days later, Holly found her dog Max dead on the side of the road. Now, it could have been a coincidence. Maybe Max got out during the fight, got scared, and ran into traffic. But given the timing, it seemed way too suspicious. Everything happened in just a couple of weeks. They had a fight. Holly pressed charges, got a restraining order, and then her dog was found dead. Holly believed Bill had killed Max to punish her for getting that protective order, or at least to send her a message. She couldn't prove it, but she was really scared of Bill now. It looked like he was showing her just how dangerous he could be. Sadly, Holly was right to be afraid, because just a few days after Max's death, she and Bill were found dead too. When the police checked out Holly and Bill's records, they found a long history of domestic disputes, including the restraining order Holly had filed just 9 days before. This made everything look pretty suspicious. So, the detectives came up with a theory. Maybe Bill realized Holly was ready to leave him for good, convinced her to get in the car, and then shot her before shooting himself. While Bill was dead and Holly was dying in the back seat, the car ran off the road and hit a tree. It seemed like a simple, open and shut case. Bill and Holly died in a murder-suicide. Case closed, right? Except there were a couple of pieces of evidence that didn't fit. First, Bill's body was on the passenger side of the car, and Holly was in the back. Neither of them was in the driver's seat. Sure, you could argue that the car hit the tree with enough force to send Bill flying from one side to the other, but it seemed more likely that someone else had been driving. Second, neither Bill's nor Holly's cell phones were in the car. Maybe Bill left his phone at home on purpose if he planned to kill Holly and himself, making it harder for anyone to track him. But no one could figure out why Holly would leave her phone behind. She wouldn't do that, especially if she suspected Bill might try something. However, there was something else missing from the car that made the police abandon the "Bill did it" theory entirely. There was no murder weapon, not anywhere near the scene. Imagine Bill shot Holly, then took his own life. After they were both dead or injured, the car ran off the road and hit the tree. The gun should still be in the car, right? Even if Bill was conscious long enough to toss the gun out the window, it would still land close to the road. But the police searched everywhere and found no gun. When the vehicle was pulled up from the embankment, there were clear signs of foul play. At first glance, it looked like a car crash, but inside, it wasn't. The passenger windows were broken out, but there was no glass around the vehicle. In a typical car crash, you'd see glass both inside and outside the car. The police started to think maybe someone staged the scene to mislead them. It could have been a professional hit by someone who knew what they were doing. The problem was, once the police ruled Bill out, there were no other obvious suspects. Nobody thought Bill or Holly had any enemies. Holly had a bunch of security cameras in her home, so the investigators checked the footage to see if anyone suspicious had been around. They found some really interesting clips from right after that last fight with Bill, the one where her dog Max went missing. After Bill left, Holly did a lot to protect herself, and the cameras caught everything. She asked her apartment management to install a new deadbolt on her door, and in the footage, she explained she was doing it because she was scared of Bill. Not long after she got the new lock, Bill came back and tried to break in. This was all on film, too. He got past an electronic lock on the front door, got inside, and wandered around, probably looking for Holly. Luckily, she wasn't home at the time. Now, on its own, this made Bill look even more guilty, but there was more. After his break-in, a few other guys showed up at her door. The police found clip after clip of different men knocking on her door and asking for her by name. The weird part was that these men were trying to hide their faces from the cameras, so they definitely weren't delivery guys or anything like that. Then, on March 10th, 3 men all showed up together. They were all in black, and their faces were covered. They knocked on the door and yelled Holly's name, saying they just wanted to talk. Holly was home, but she didn't believe them and didn't want to talk. The cameras showed her running around until she found a safety bar to block the door from being opened. Basically, she stopped the guys from breaking in and forcing their way inside. So those 3 guys were definitely suspicious, right? Especially now that Holly and Bill were gone. But here's the problem. The detectives couldn't figure out who they were with their faces all covered up. One of them had a bit of his face showing, but it wasn't enough for an ID. The cops even put their pictures out there hoping someone might recognize them, but no luck. No one called in with any good tips. So they had to start digging into Holly's life to see if maybe she knew these guys from work or her friends. They didn't get far before they found out something surprising. Holly wasn't just working as an esthetician in Nashville. She was also doing escort work on the side. She'd been doing it since she was like 18 or 19, and apparently she was pretty open about it. It wasn't a big secret. Her friends knew all about it and spilled to the cops. Holly used the name Layla Love for that gig, mostly sticking around Nashville but sometimes traveling for clients. It paid really well. Cash and expensive gifts like jewelry, trips, and even furniture for her place. Turns out, Holly had pricey tastes, and her escort work helped her afford all that stuff she wanted. As we know, sex work can be risky, so the cops started looking into Holly's clients. They found a few leads. When those guys showed up at her door wanting to chat, one mentioned another client by name. Plus, right before Holly died, she got a bunch of messages from someone saved as Jimmy Green in her phone. The weird thing was that Jimmy texted her on both her personal phone and the one she used for escorting. It seemed like he knew her well enough to get her private number somehow. The detectives traced Jimmy's phone number and found out it was linked to a messaging app called Pinger. That app gives you a fake number to call or text from, all anonymous-like. Smart move, right? Except the cops got a warrant and got Pinger to hand over all of Jimmy's user info. But even with that, they still didn't know who Jimmy Green really was. All they had was his email, jimmygreen34@gmail.com. The good news was that Gmail users had to enter a name when they signed up, but the bad news was that it didn't have to be their real name. So, Jimmy Green went with Agent 47, the name of a video game character from Hitman. So here's the rundown. It started with a phone number leading to a Pinger account. That account pointed to a Gmail address owned by someone who liked video games. But the detectives were still in the dark about his real identity. Jimmy Green, or whoever he really was a pro at hiding his tracks with fake names and Pinger. It made him look even more suspicious, although I get the need for privacy. This was next level. At this stage, the police switched tactics. Instead of chasing down Jimmy Green's digital footprints, they traced his cell phone's IP address to locate the specific device he used. After hitting many dead ends, they finally traced it to a phone registered under a man named Adam Cary. Even better, Adam bore a striking resemblance to one of the men caught on Holly's security cameras, the one with part of his face visible. This breakthrough gave the police a solid lead. Now they needed to uncover Adam's motive for targeting Holly. Adam had a military background, serving in the Marines with a special ops team. After leaving the military, he worked in private security, but his return to civilian life wasn't smooth. In 2016, he was caught impersonating a police officer, and a search of his car turned up a stash of bombs and weapons, which raised serious concerns. Despite this, he only received a 4-month prison sentence. Clearly, Adam had the capability to commit such a crime, but the question remained: why would he target Holly? There seemed to be no connection between them. Adam didn't live in Nashville. He resided in North Carolina at the time of the murders. While he had exchanged messages with Holly on her Escort phone number, there was no evidence he had ever hired her, nor did he appear on any client lists under his real name or the alias Jimmy Green. There was nothing to suggest they had ever crossed paths before. So, the police then dug into Adam's Pinger account, which he used to message Holly without revealing his real number, and found he'd also messaged another guy named Brian Brockway. Apparently, Brian had contacted Adam about a job opportunity, but initially, it wasn't clear what the job was about. Brian and Adam had a lot in common. They were both Marines who moved into private security after leaving the military. Brian worked with high-level government personnel from his base in Austin, not Nashville, and had no apparent link to Holly. After Brian mentioned this job to Adam, Adam sent him a file titled Tennessee Sitrep on March 9, 2020. Sitrep is military shorthand for a situational report, basically detailing information important for military operations. In this case, it contained specifics about Bill and Holly, like their daily routines and when they typically left home. Adam also shared this document with another man named Gilad Pett, nicknamed Gil. Like Adam and Brian, Gil had a military background. He served in the Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, claiming to have been in special forces, although this wasn't confirmed. So after leaving the military, Gil started his own private security company in Southern California, where he landed clients like actor Charlie Sheen. However, he eventually lost that job and relocated to Texas. In Texas, Gil tried to kickstart a new security venture called SpearTip, but he struggled to find clients, likely because Austin isn't exactly Hollywood in terms of demand for private security services. Despite this, Gil needed work and was open to almost any opportunity. That's when he took on a job offered by a car dealership named Charles Ma Toyota. They were having issues with trespassing and needed security help. The dealership, owned by Charles Mondand, his grandson Eric, had been a fixture in the area for many years. Let me tell you in a simple way. Holly was texting Adam Cary, though nobody knew how they knew each other since there was no obvious connection. Adam was working with Brian Brockway, who hired him for a mysterious job involving keeping tabs on Holly and Bill. Brian's motives weren't clear, and he also had no apparent ties to Holly and Bill. Both Brian and Adam were also linked to Gil, who worked for Eric Mond, owner of Charles Mond Toyota. After extensive investigation, police connected Gil to Holly through Eric Mond. It turns out Eric had hired Holly as an escort multiple times under the alias Eric Moore. About a month before Holly's murder, on February 3, 2020, Eric emailed Holly saying he'd be in Nashville soon. A couple of days later, on February 5th, he texted Holly, "Good morning, beautiful. Look forward to today. I'm in Nashville. I'll meet you in the bar like last time." Eric didn't contact Holly again after that, but did exchange texts with Bill, Holly's boyfriend. Now, it's unclear in all of this if Bill was involved in Holly's escort work or what he knew and when, but a month after Eric's trip to Nashville, Bill hacked into Holly's escort account and found information about her clients. He used this to blackmail Eric, threatening to expose Eric's visits to Holly as an escort unless he paid up. Instead of paying, Eric contacted his private security guard, Gil, on the same day. Eric wanted Gil to find out Holly's real identity, knowing Lila Love wasn't her true name. However, Gil wasn't skilled in this kind of investigation, so he asked for help from Brian Brockway and his brother Chad, who both worked in security. Chad, unaware of the true situation, believed he was helping find a missing person and gathered all of Holly's details, which he sent to Brian. Brian then brought in Adam Cary, who contacted Holly using a pinger app. Adam didn't stop at texting. He and two others, seen on security footage, confronted Holly directly. Eventually, Adam figured out that Bill, not Holly, was trying to blackmail Eric for money. How exactly he pieced it together isn't clear, but Adam untangled the whole mess. His next move was to use the pinger app to send messages to both Bill and Holly. Then, he followed Bill to the grocery store, although it's unclear if Bill knew he was being followed. On March 11th, Bill called Eric at home, probably to pressure him for payment. After this call, Eric decided he'd had enough. Shortly after, Brian informed Gil that he and Adam were authorized to kill both Bill and Holly if necessary. Adam then sent his two companions away, presumably to minimize witnesses. The very next day, Brian flew to Nashville. On March 12th, Holly and Bill were killed, but the exact details of what happened and where are still unclear. However, security cameras at Holly's apartment show that they left around 11:40 p.m. Despite their recent fights and the restraining order, Bill was with her that night. They walked out toward the parking garage, but Bill went back inside briefly to grab something before they left again. They walked off, and since the cameras didn't cover everything, we don't know exactly where they went, but they were headed toward the parking area. After they were out of sight, the cameras picked up the sound of a car starting, followed by several gunshots and yelling from a man and a woman. Then, everything went quiet. No one in the apartment complex heard any of this. It was all captured by the security camera. But this footage was enough for the police to come up with a new theory. Adam and Brian ambushed the couple right after they left the apartment in the parking lot. They deliberately shot Bill because he was the one blackmailing Eric. Unfortunately, they also hit Holly in the chest by accident. Realizing they now had two bodies to deal with, they drove Holly's car to a remote location. When they arrived, they discovered Holly was still alive, so they shot her again, this time in the head. Afterward, Adam and Brian got out of the car but left it in gear so it rolled into the woods. After the murders, Adam and Brian were caught on a gas station camera driving to Memphis, Tennessee. Adam dropped Brian off at the Memphis airport, and then Adam drove back home to Austin, while Brian flew to Austin. Strangely, after all this happened, Eric left a positive online review for Gil's security company, Spear Tip. It was like leaving a glowing review for something trivial, like buying socks on Amazon. Eric didn't mention the specifics of what Gil did, but he praised Spear Tip for being professional and efficient, saying he wouldn't consider using anyone else. I can't stop thinking about that online review. Eric basically advertised that he hired Gil's company, Spear Tip, even though they were involved in the murders. It's crazy after Adam and the others went to great lengths to cover their tracks. Criminals can be so dumb sometimes. The FBI easily tracked Eric's finances and found he paid the killers nearly $1 million in total. This investigation was super complex with lots of dead ends and false leads. It took the police 2 years to reveal everything, but they were still missing one thing: proof that Eric ordered the hit. Without solid proof, Eric could easily claim innocence, saying he hired Gil and the others for legitimate purposes like gathering information on Holly and Bill. Some text messages even suggested the plan was merely to intimidate them, not kill them. To secure convictions for everyone involved, including Eric, the detectives needed someone to confess that the murders were planned and authorized by him. They couldn't risk tipping off the suspects, especially with their military backgrounds making escape a real possibility. So, instead of immediately bringing them in for questioning, the detectives had to find a way to gather evidence without direct interrogations of Adam, Brian, Gil, or Eric. Chad Brockway, unaware of the initial plan to harm or kill Holly, agreed to cooperate with the investigation when approached by the police. He went undercover and contacted Adam Cary, pretending to solicit another murder for hire. Surprisingly, Adam remained composed during the conversation, discussing the tools required and quoting a fee of $60,000 for the job. So, Chad met up with his brother Brian at a restaurant in downtown Austin, wearing a wire to record their conversation. At first, Brian didn't say much, but after they finished eating and walked to the parking lot, Brian started talking. Chad saw his chance and asked Brian all about Eric, Holly, and Bill. Brian didn't hold back. He shared details. He mentioned how Bill fought back when they attacked, almost like Brian was proud of overpowering and killing someone. Brian also said Adam was the one who shot Holly, and he seemed to think it was impressive. I mean, seriously, how messed up is that? Acting like hurting someone innocent makes you tough or honorable is just wrong. Brian, Adam, and Gil were all arrested on December 10th, 2021. The police were careful to time the arrests together because they were concerned that if any of them found out they were wanted, they might try to flee. They held off on arresting Eric, though. It seemed they still couldn't prove Eric had ordered the killings, rather than Adam, Brian, and Gil deciding to escalate things on their own. So, with all three killers in custody, the investigators believed none of them would take the blame for Eric. They convinced Gil to cooperate by suggesting he call Eric and ask for more money, framing it as Adam demanding extra cash to stay quiet about the hit. Gil followed through, contacting Eric and conveying the message. Eric responded by agreeing to pay $225,000, but insisted Adam needed to disappear afterward. He expressed gratitude for Adam's actions but emphasized he wanted to ensure there would be no future complications. He also planned to funnel $150,000 through Spear Tip, just as before. So, that was exactly what the police needed. They quickly sent officers to pull over Eric, who was driving back from a hunting trip at the time. With that, they had their final killer in custody. Gil pleaded guilty in December 2022 to murder for hire resulting in death, conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and kidnapping resulting in death. As of now, he hasn't been sentenced yet because part of his deal required him to testify against the other three. Prosecutors wanted to ensure he fulfilled his end of the bargain before deciding his punishment. It took nearly another year before Eric, Adam, and Brian faced the jury together in November 2023. They had separate lawyers, so the courtroom was quite chaotic. Their defense teams tried to argue that Gil had tricked Eric into hiring the other two, and according to them, Bill and Holly's deaths were a tragic coincidence. Just as the police initially suspected, a case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Obviously, that didn't seem likely at all. Also, Gil didn't go along with their cover story. He testified in detail, explaining that initially the plan was just to scare Bill and Holly by kidnapping them. But when Brian suggested killing them and proposed it to Eric, Eric agreed right away. After about 2 weeks and 7 hours of deliberation, the jury sided with Gil's version of events. They found Adam and Brian guilty of conspiracy to commit murder for hire, guilty of kidnapping resulting in death, and guilty of conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Eric was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder for hire and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. All of them, including Gil, could face life sentences, and more details will emerge during their hearings in 2024. For now, Holly and Bill's loved ones must wait for justice. It's infuriating to think they died over such a senseless reason, Eric's infidelity and fear of being caught. It's heartbreaking to see how someone's selfishness and fear of reputation led to such a senseless loss of life. Holly was innocent in all of this, caught in a terrifying situation she didn't understand. It's tragic to think about what her life could have been if she hadn't been caught up in Bill's actions. Her story deserves to be heard, and all those involved, including Bill, must be held accountable for their roles in this tragedy. As we reflect on this heartbreaking story, let's also consider how we can prevent such tragedies in the future. Let's strive for a society where people resolve conflicts with integrity and respect for others' lives. Holly deserved so much more, and her memory should inspire us to seek justice and compassion in all aspects of life. Let's continue to discuss and learn from cases like these so that we can build a safer and more compassionate world. Thank you for joining me today. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives into intriguing cases. Until next time, take care and stay safe.